When people watch Max Verstappen driving a Formula One car, one thing becomes clear almost immediately. The car reacts extremely quickly when he turns the steering wheel. The front of the car seems to bite into the corner instantly, almost like the car pivots around the front axle. To many fans, it looks aggressive, even slightly unstable at times. But according to engineers and analysts, this behavior is not accidental. It is actually the result of a very specific car philosophy developed by Red Bull Racing over several seasons. Verstappen prefers a car with extremely strong front-end grip, what engineers often call a pointy front end. And that preference has shaped the way the Red Bull cars are designed. To understand why this matters, it helps to look at how Formula One cars behave when entering a corner. As the driver approaches the corner, they brake heavily to reduce speed. During braking, weight shifts toward the front of the car, increasing the load on the front tires. That extra load helps the front tires generate grip so the car can begin turning. But the way the car reacts when the steering wheel is turned depends heavily on the balance between the front and rear of the car. If the front tires have strong grip and respond quickly, the car rotates immediately. If the front grip is weaker, the car resists turning and begins to understeer. Most drivers prefer a balanced car that feels stable and predictable. They want the front and rear to work together smoothly so the car turns progressively into the corner. Verstappen, however, prefers something different. He likes a car where the front end reacts instantly when he begins to steer. In other words, the car turns very sharply at the front. Engineers describe this behavior as a pointy front end because the front of the car seems to point directly toward the apex as soon as steering input begins. This kind of setup can make the car extremely effective in the hands of the right driver. When the front end is very responsive, the driver can rotate the car quickly at the start of the corner. That early rotation allows the driver to straighten the car sooner and begin accelerating earlier on corner exit. In Formula One, earlier acceleration is extremely valuable because it increases speed down the following straight. Even a small advantage in corner exit can translate into tenths of a second over a lap. But a pointy front end also has disadvantages. When the front of the car responds aggressively, the rear of the car can feel unstable. As the front tires bite into the corner, the rear tires may struggle to keep up. This can make the car feel nervous, especially at high speeds. Drivers who are not comfortable with this behavior may feel like the rear of the car is constantly on the edge of sliding. This is where Verstappen's driving style becomes important. Verstappen is known for having exceptional confidence in the front of the car. He is comfortable turning into corners aggressively and trusting that the front tires will grip the track. Because he trusts the front end so much, he can commit to corners earlier than many drivers. That early commitment allows him to rotate the car quickly and position it perfectly for the exit. Telemetry analysis often shows that Verstappen begins rotating the car earlier than other drivers. The steering angle increases quickly as he enters the corner, and the car's rotation begins almost immediately. Because the front tires are generating strong grip, the car responds exactly as he expects. Instead of waiting for the car to turn gradually, Verstappen creates the rotation himself through decisive steering inputs. Another advantage of strong front-end grip is how it influences the middle phase of the corner. Once the car begins rotating toward the apex, maintaining that rotation is crucial for carrying speed through the corner. If the front tires lose grip, the car begins to push wide and the driver must reduce speed. But when the front tires remain strong, the driver can maintain a tighter line and keep more momentum. Verstappen's ability to maintain front grip through the middle of the corner allows him to carry impressive mid-corner speeds. Engineers analyzing onboard data often notice that his car rotates smoothly and maintains a stable trajectory toward the apex. That stability allows him to focus on preparing the car for the exit phase rather than correcting understeer. This leads to one of the biggest advantages of Verstappen's preferred setup, earlier throttle application. Once the car has rotated toward the apex, the driver wants to begin accelerating as soon as possible. But acceleration can only begin when the steering wheel starts to straighten. If the car is still heavily rotated, applying throttle can cause the rear tires to lose grip. Because Verstappen rotates the car earlier, he often reaches the point where he can straighten the steering wheel sooner. This means he can begin accelerating earlier than drivers who rotate the car later in the corner. That earlier acceleration helps build speed faster on the exit. Have you ever noticed how Verstappen sometimes seems to launch out of corners more aggressively than other drivers? That effect is often the result of this earlier rotation and earlier throttle application. However, this type of car setup can be extremely difficult for other drivers to manage. A front end that reacts instantly can make the car feel unpredictable. Drivers who rely on gradual steering inputs may struggle because the car rotates more quickly than they expect. This can create the sensation that the rear of the car is sliding or stepping out. Several drivers who joined Red Bull as Verstappen's teammates have mentioned how sensitive the car feels at the front. They often describe the car as extremely sharp or nervous on corner entry. For drivers who prefer a more balanced car, adapting to this setup can be challenging. Think about how difficult it must be to drive a car that reacts instantly to every small steering movement. Would you prefer a car that responds immediately or one that turns more gradually and predictably? Let me know what you think in the comments, because drivers often have very different preferences when it comes to car balance. Another reason Verstappen can exploit this pointy front end is his ability to manage the car's balance with precise inputs. When the front of the car reacts quickly, small steering movements can create large changes in direction. Verstappen's control over these small movements allows him to guide the car exactly where he wants it to go, without overcorrecting. This precision is visible in onboard footage, where the steering wheel movements often look confident and controlled. Even when the car appears aggressive from the outside, the steering inputs themselves remain precise rather than chaotic. That precision allows Verstappen to keep the car within the ideal grip window of the tyres. Aerodynamics also play a significant role in how this front-end behavior is achieved. Formula One cars generate a large portion of their grip from aerodynamic downforce. The front wing, floor, and suspension geometry all influence how the front tyres interact with the track. Engineers at Red Bull have become extremely skilled at designing cars that produce strong aerodynamic load at the front. This aerodynamic philosophy complements Verstappen's driving style perfectly. With more downforce pressing the front tyres into the track, the car can respond instantly when he turns the steering wheel. That immediate response is exactly what he prefers. Another interesting factor is how Verstappen adapts his braking technique to support this setup. When approaching corners, he often uses strong initial braking followed by a smooth release as he begins turning. This technique keeps weight on the front tyres slightly longer, increasing front grip at the exact moment the car begins to rotate. By combining strong front-end aerodynamics with precise braking and steering techniques, Verstappen creates a driving style that maximizes the strengths of the car. The front tyres remain heavily loaded during corner entry, allowing the car to rotate quickly and efficiently. But again, this balance is extremely delicate. If the front grip becomes too strong relative to the rear, the car can become unstable. Engineers must carefully tune suspension settings, aerodynamic balance, and tyre pressures to ensure the car remains controllable. Verstappen's feedback to the engineers plays a crucial role in finding this balance. Drivers often communicate with their engineers about how the car feels in different phases of the corner. Verstappen frequently emphasizes the importance of front-end response in his feedback. By focusing development on improving that response, Red Bull has gradually built cars that suit his driving preferences extremely well. The result is a machine that allows Verstappen to attack corners with confidence. Instead of waiting for the car to rotate naturally, he actively initiates the rotation with decisive steering inputs. That aggressive entry phase helps set up faster exits, which ultimately leads to quicker lap times. Over the course of a race, these small advantages accumulate. Every corner exit where Verstappen gains a fraction of speed contributes to his overall performance. Even differences measured in hundredths of a second become important in a sport where margins are incredibly small. And this brings us back to the original idea. Verstappen needs extreme front grip because his entire driving style is built around rapid car rotation and early throttle application. By designing the car to provide that strong front-end response, Red Bull has created a machine that perfectly complements his approach to driving. The next time you watch Verstappen enter a corner, pay attention to how quickly the front of the car reacts when he turns the steering wheel. Notice how the car rotates almost immediately and how quickly he begins preparing for the exit. That sharp front-end behavior might look aggressive or even unstable at first glance, but it is actually one of the keys to his speed. And now I want to hear your opinion. Do you think designing a car around one driver's preferences is the right strategy for a Formula One team? Or should teams aim for a more balanced car that suits multiple drivers equally well? Share your thoughts in the comments, because the debate about driver-focused car design is one of the most fascinating aspects of modern Formula One.